King Charles is facing a mystery that will not stay quiet. Not because the palace is short on lawyers, because the most explosive sentence on earth is still sealed inside a red box. 2 letters, one to Charles, one to the Queen's private secretary, Sir Edward Young. And the worst part is simple. Nobody has opened them in public. Nobody has explained why they were sealed. Nobody has said a single word that could dissolve the doubt. Queen Elizabeth died at Balmoral on September 8, 2022. She was 96. Her last day was not a pause, it was work. The familiar red box was brought to her room that day, the same way it came every day of her reign. Except for her birthday and Christmas. Those boxes carried state papers, ministerial briefings, Commonwealth correspondence, the machinery of monarchy, the language of duty. And Elizabeth was known for reading it all, not just signing, not just glancing, reading, then marking with her red pen, in her precise, restrained way. Before we roll the footage, just one thing. If you enjoy our work, drop a like and hit subscribe. Over 98% of you are watching without subscribing. Let's change that right now. It's free for you, but it fuels everything we do. Subscribed? Perfect. Now, enjoy the video. So when Young received the final box after her death, the discovery landed like a trapdoor. Inside, there were private letters too, sealed. One addressed to Prince Charles, the other addressed to Young himself. Royal biographer Robert Hardman discussed this in his research for his book, The Making of a King. About Charles and the modern monarchy, neither letter has been made public, neither has been explained. And that silence, in a world built to leak, feels engineered. Let me slow it down for a second, because a sealed private letter is one thing. A sealed private letter placed inside a red box of official state business is something else entirely. It means this was not an afterthought. It was not a spare sentiment tucked away by accident. It was a final act with the full weight of constitutional symbolism. Elizabeth didn't treat the monarchy like theatre. She treated it like an institution that could break if you lied to it. Now consider what we've been told publicly since February 2022. Elizabeth made a statement about Camilla becoming Queen Consort. She did it as her own wish, carefully worded, carefully timed, and carefully managed. And in that statement, she asked that when Charles became king, Camilla would be called Queen Consort, not Princess Consort. It was a public signal of acceptance, a clean political correction, a message to the country, a message to the palace, a message to anyone still clinging to the old story. Then the Queen died a few months later, and 2 sealed letters appeared in the same red box that carried the business of the realm. One to Charles, one to Young. So the inciting event is no longer just a family secret, it becomes a governance problem. Because constitutional monarchy is built on timing, trust, and communication. What happens when the final message is sealed and unread? And now the suspense escalates. Because people are not only wondering what Elizabeth wrote, they're wondering what Charles has chosen to do with it. Because Charles has not referenced the letter publicly. He hasn't confirmed what it said. He hasn't offered even an elusive comfort. No, my mother's note brought me strength. No, I understand her intention. Nothing. In a royal world where even the air around the couple gets narrated, this is absolute. The silence is louder than any headline. Reports and royal commentary already trace the emotional backstory. For decades, the Queen's personal hostility toward Camilla was widely described. After Princess Diana's 1995 BBC interview, accounts suggested Charles was directly told to end his relationship with Camilla. Some biographies even describe the Queen using harsh language privately, including a phrase that framed Camilla as wicked. That detail matters, not because gossip is accurate, but because Queen Elizabeth was not known for theatrical outbursts. Her restraint was her brand. Her composure was her method. So when accounts describe strong private contempt, it implies years of tension, not a passing mood. But here is the twist that makes this feel like a thriller, not a biography. The story does not end with distance. It ends with reversal, public reversal, the kind that requires approval, staging, and careful repositioning inside the palace machine. Camilla didn't move from outsider to queen consort overnight. She moved through gatekeepers, appearances, charities, and calculated visibility. From what many observers have documented, acceptance grew step by step, sometimes painfully slow. Camilla's public trajectory is often described as quiet strategy. She appeared in key moments. She attended events where attention could be controlled. She focused on causes that aligned with stable royal branding, particularly domestic violence survivors and literacy initiatives. Avoid attention that reactivates the 1990s. That was the pattern. Not only what she did, but what she didn't do. And then came turning points. In April 2002, Camilla attended the funeral of the Queen Mother. It was a signal. Years earlier, she had been blocked from major events. Then, suddenly, she was present. A small shift, but royal shifts are never small. From there, the path to the throne became a slow climb. In April 2005, Charles and Camilla married in a civil ceremony. Elizabeth did not attend the ceremony itself, but she hosted the reception at Windsor Castle. She also hosted the public ritual, and she delivered a speech, a toast that reportedly began with a metaphor involving a horse race, then moved to celebration. She chose to be there. That choice matters because it signals something constitutional and symbolic. Elizabeth didn't just tolerate Camilla. She processed her. She placed her inside the story of the monarchy. Then came 2023, Westminster Abbey, the coronation, a visual that detonated the old narrative. Camilla was crowned alongside Charles, the first coronation in 70 years, wearing a crown adapted from one made for Queen Mary. The woman who had been described as wicked in private accounts was now queen in full view. The symbolism was brutal, the contradiction was public, and the question returns like a drumbeat. What did Elizabeth truly say in private when no staff, no press office, and no timeline could filter it? Because the public story is tidy now. Elizabeth endorsed Camilla as queen consort. The transition happened. The ceremony happened. The photos happened. The press cycles moved on. But the private letters, those remain locked. And locked things are where the real drama lives. So what could be inside? Some possibilities suggest confirmation. Maybe the sealed letter matches the public statement, refined only for a son who had lived through the entire emotional storm. Maybe it was a mother's final blessing. Maybe she explained that Camilla's status was now beyond argument. Maybe she asked Charles to protect her public dignity with the same discipline Elizabeth used on everyone else. But there is another possibility, and it's the one that makes conspiracy theories smell like fiction and still feel plausible. The sealed letter may complicate the public message. It may contain conditions, not compliments. It may contain an admission, not an endorsement. It may reveal an internal conflict the palace cleaned up for survival. And the most unsettling detail is this. Elizabeth placed 2 private letters in the same red box that carried official state business. That isn't just symbolism. That's a hierarchy of meaning. If her words were simply personal, she could have put them in private papers. If she wanted secrecy only in the family, she could have sealed the letters in a drawer. Instead, she integrated the private into the administrative structure of power. That feels like instruction, or warning, or final custody. Now we shift to another sealed witness, Sir Edward Young. Young served as the Queen's private secretary from 2017 until her death. He opened that final red box. He is the only living person who saw both letters before they were locked away from public view, according to what Hardman's reporting described. And his letter was addressed directly to him. That is a separate mystery. What did the Queen write to the man who managed her daily rhythm and the transition after her death? Gratitude? Instructions? Reflections? A moral ledger? If we want realism, we have to ask what palace staff normally do. They manage narratives through carefully worded statements. The press office releases what is safe. The monarchy survives by control of information. Yet here, at the very end, Elizabeth chose total silence. She chose secrecy so strict, it becomes its own political atmosphere. And that's where the escalation begins again, because silence always creates a vacuum, and vacuums attract leaks. Over the past 2 years, The royal media ecosystem has chased the same unanswered question. British outlets like BBC Royal Reporting and tabloid commentators and broadsheet analysis threads have all circled around the sealed letters. The Guardian Culture Desk, royal reporters writing for years, and even commentary from academics and constitutional historians have floated the same logic. When something is sealed, it is probably being sealed for a reason bigger than privacy. It is being sealed because it can't be safely released without consequence. In other words, the inciting event is not only the letters, it's the refusal to open them. Then the political system begins to react in the only way it can, indirectly. Polling firms don't need the text to see the impact. Public trust is measurable. Confusion is measurable. Dissatisfaction is measurable. In a democracy, royal drama becomes national psychology, and national psychology becomes elections, budgets, and speeches. So the fallout doesn't just live online, it lives in surveys, it lives in focus groups, it lives in the tone of late-night hosts and the questions asked in parliamentary debates. It lives in the way people discuss the monarchy as if it were a public institution rather than a private family, because they know something is being kept. Social media trends already show a pattern, even before we have the contents. Hashtags shift from, "Is Camilla finally secure?" to, "What did the Queen say to Charles?" to, "Why is it sealed?" Clips from commentators on YouTube and TikTok spike whenever new rumors surface. And because audiences trust drama more than press releases, speculation becomes a shadow government. Experts start to weigh in. Constitutional scholars often remind viewers how monarchy works. They say the crown is symbolic. They say the monarch doesn't govern directly. They say private correspondence is legally private. But that argument has limits, because the Queen's final letters are not only private, they are part of the chain of succession, part of the story of legitimacy. When Oxford University or London-based historians comment on royal documentation, they don't usually say, "It's probably scandal." They say, "It's probably meaningful." They emphasize how Elizabeth's own approach to governance was disciplined and intentional. She did not accidentally place her private words inside state instruments. She did not casually seal letters and let them sit in darkness. In that climate, the world starts to treat the letters like a dossier, like a missing piece in the mechanism. So now we reach the escalation phase, where reactions and outrage start to feel inevitable. British journalists, whether cautious or sensational, begin describing the situation with sharper language, not because they know the contents, but because the implication grows. Viewers sense that the palace might be protecting something worse than embarrassment. Viewers sense the monarchy might be protecting something that could change public perception of Charles's accession and Camilla's rise. And then the most emotional part arrives, as it always does when royalty collides with public memory. People remember Diana. They remember the 1990s pain. They remember the news footage, the interviews, the heartbreak that turned into global obsession. Even if you personally never cared about the royals before, you have probably seen clips of Diana's world-shaking moment. And a private letter becomes the missing file in a court case nobody can reopen. So we hear testimony, not in sworn court format, but in the language of first-person grief from former palace watchers, journalists who covered the era, and commentators with long credibility. They speak about what the Queen's private stance meant to the institution's emotional health. They suggest that if the Queen's private words were harsher than the public version, then Charles inherited more than a throne. He inherited a conflict he never got to resolve. And if the Queen's private words were softer than the public version, that means the public story itself was edited. That possibility is not comforting either. It suggests Elizabeth curated truth twice, once publicly and once privately. That's why the mystery escalates from intrigue into betrayal. Because betrayal is not only about infidelity or secret affairs. Betrayal in politics is about withheld truth, about the sense that power is being surrounded by secrecy so complete it feels like moral evasion. When Charles stays silent, some viewers interpret it as dignity, others interpret it as control, and when Young stays silent, others interpret it as institutional loyalty rather than personal grief. And when both remain silent, the speculation hardens into narrative. A narrative becomes a belief becomes pressure. So where does this go next? We start to see global impact, because the monarchy is not only British now, it is international culture. The monarchy is watched by former colonies and allied nations. It appears in diplomatic symbolism. It shows up in state visits, in Commonwealth conversations, and in the way newspapers in Canada, Australia, and parts of Europe frame stability and tradition. When a constitutional drama occurs, it doesn't stay inside one island. It becomes an export of public doubt. Other institutions respond through their own channels. Press agencies in Europe treat the sealed letter story like a legitimacy question. Commonwealth commentators debate what the Crown represents today. Even royal historians in the United States and Australia use the story to discuss transparency and modern expectation. The letters are sealed, but the argument spills everywhere. And that's the calm before the next revelation, because the suspense isn't just what Elizabeth wrote. It's what her choice tells us about her final priority. Did she want to protect Charles? Did she want to protect the institution? Did she want to protect Camilla? Or did she want to protect a fragile consensus that could shatter if the wrong message became public? In thriller terms, it's the difference between a blessing and a verdict. Now comes the newest twist that keeps the stakes rising. The sealed letters are not the only thing that is sitting in darkness. There are also the private frameworks around how royal servants function during transitions. The palace uses intermediaries for everything. It controls access. It controls narratives. So when you put a sealed letter inside an official red box, you're not just hiding words, you're tying them to authority. That changes how the public interprets silence. Silence becomes a form of governance. And you can see this in how modern royal watchers frame it. They don't treat the letters as relics. They treat them like a governance artifact, like a document that could be referenced if the palace wanted to settle doubts, but isn't. That suggests either fear or restraint, and either option carries weight. If Charles has the letter and still refuses to mention it, then either the content is too dangerous for public comfort, or he believes the institution cannot survive disclosure. If Young has his own letter and refuses to mention its existence beyond already reported details, then that suggests the Queen left something that requires strict loyalty. And loyalty, in political systems, is not free. It has consequences. Here, we bring in the emotional beat again, because in the end, this story isn't only about documents. It's about a mother and a son. It's about a family that outgrew public forgiveness but never stopped negotiating it. Elizabeth managed crises in public. She maintained the monarchy through heartbreak. She watched Charles's choices. She watched Diana's tragedy become national grief. She watched the institution get battered by tabloids and global TV. She learned, painfully, that private matters become public anyway. Still, she sealed the letters. That means she believed the secrecy was worth the cost. She believed the cost of silence would be less than the cost of disclosure. And that is the core of the mystery. Now we enter the fallout phase, in its most dramatic form: public trust versus private truth. Polls and perception metrics, even without the contents, are already shaping the conversation about whether people feel excluded from the real story. When audiences perceive a double standard, they stop believing official narratives. They start asking why one layer of the monarchy is protected more than others. The palace, of course, denies any implication of wrongdoing. In official terms, the monarchy exists to be stable. It avoids scandals. It avoids legal disputes with family records. It respects privacy. It insists that a private letter is private. But viewers aren't asking for scandal. They're asking for coherence. They're asking why the last message from the Queen to her heir won't even be acknowledged as comfort or instruction. They want the minimum transparency that doesn't expose the text. A single line would do it, yet Charles chooses none. So the betrayal becomes personal for the audience. It becomes betrayal of trust, not the Queen's alleged cruelty, not Camilla's past controversies. Betrayal of the idea that legitimacy should come with explanation. Modern audiences don't just want tradition, they want accountable meaning. And in this climate, the story turns toward resignation and reflection. Commentators point out resignations and resignations of confidence, even if nobody literally steps down. They describe how the press office tone changes. They describe how royal statements now arrive with slightly more caution. They describe how journalists guard their phrasing because the palace cannot be pinned down. But the question remains unresolved. What is in the sealed letter to Charles? What did Elizabeth decide in her final months? Was it aligned with the public statement? Or did it reveal a new private truth that contradicted the carefully staged endorsement? And why would she place a private letter inside the official red box if she wanted it to remain purely emotional? At this point, the global impact reaches a quiet boil. In countries where the monarchy is debated, the story becomes ammunition for critics. They argue tradition is outdated and transparency is necessary for legitimacy. In countries where the monarchy is still beloved, supporters argue privacy is sacred. But both camps now share the same fuel, the sealed letters. The same unanswered question. International institutions don't issue formal statements about a British royal letter, but they shape discourse through coverage, and coverage becomes political pressure. The final phase is resolution, but not a real one. It's a cliffhanger, because this story can end in two ways, and both are dramatic. One possibility is that the letters are opened and published at some point, perhaps after Charles's death, perhaps through a legal process, perhaps through a reluctant decision by those who control access. If that happens, the contents could confirm the public narrative or shatter it. Either way, it will rewrite how history is understood. It will rewrite how the Camilla endorsement is interpreted. It will rewrite how we think Elizabeth managed her private judgment. The other possibility is darker. The letters remain sealed forever, or at least for the rest of Charles's life. In that case, the uncertainty becomes permanent. The monarchy survives, but trust doesn't. The institution becomes a locked room. And locked rooms, in public life, never stay calm for long. So here are the haunting questions that stay with you long after the video ends. Did Elizabeth seal those letters because she wanted her son to have closure? Or did she seal them because she feared the closure would harm everyone else? And if the content could be safely shared, why has Charles remained silent for more than 2 years? What does Camilla truly know, if anything? Does she understand what the letters say? And does she believe silence is protection or control? And when the next political crisis hits the monarchy, will the sealed letters become a weapon, a shield, or a confession waiting for the right moment? If you want the receipts, the timelines, and the real reasoning behind the royal narrative, hit subscribe to Crown Watch. And stay tuned, because when sealed documents start shaping public perception, the next leak doesn't just happen, it arrives like thunder.